In the previous lesson, we built a method for escaping the characters in the parameters of our URL to make sure that none of the characters were unsafe ASCII. Now, our method worked, but Apple actually provides a set of classes that we can use to accomplish the exact same thing. The first of these classes that we're going to talk about is NSURL Components. NSURL Components is a class designed to help us build URLs in a piecewise fashion. That is to say that a URL can be built from individual pieces or components. If we look at URLs more closely, we can start to see some of these common components. Here's a URL for a web page that has information about Udacity's nanodegree programs. We can actually omit the www portion. It isn't required, and we could focus on the rest. The first part of the URL, called the scheme, specifies the protocol that we're using. In this case, the scheme we're using is HTTPS. Next, the part many refer to as the website name, here at udacity.com, is called the host name, or host for short. The host is used to determine the location of the server. The final part of this URL is called the path. It specifies the location on the server where the resource that we want is located. In this case, we want the resource located at the path nanodegree. And like we said before, the resource at this location is a web page that has information about Udacity's nanodegree programs. Using NSURL components, we can create this URL in just a few lines of code. And you can see here in this code example that I've had to use the slash character in the path. That is required, so it may not look the exact same on the previous screen that we saw, but you'll need to provide the slash here. But what about a more complex URL like the ones we'll be using in Flick Finder? Here's another example. This URL uses the Flickr API's flickr.photos.search method. And just so you know, I've omitted some of the parameters in this particular example for brevity. We can go ahead and label the scheme, the host, and the path. But what do we call everything else? Well, the question mark separates the path from the next component in this URL that's called the query. The query is composed of name-value pairs that a server can use to determine its response. You'll notice that each pair is separated by an ampersand. To add the query component to a URL using NSURL Components, we need to introduce a new class called NSURL Query Item. A NSURL Query Item represents a single name-value pair in the query component of a URL. To create an NSURL query item is pretty straightforward. We just need to specify the name and the value. Then, NSURL Components has a property called Query Items, which is an array of NSURL query item, so we can just add any query items that we make to this array. In code, it might look something like this. If we go over here, we can see the resulting URL. And I know this might seem like a lot of work just to create a URL, but the big trade-off is that NSURL Components takes care of ensuring that our URLs are properly escaped and only contain safe ASCII characters. And that's a nice reassurance for us. Let's take a look at one final example. This URL is taken from Matt Thompson's post on NSURL Components on NSHipster. I've posted a link to the article in the instructor notes. Now, at first glance, this URL is a lot to take in, but it just contains some extra optional components of a URL. They're already labeled here, and if you're interested, I encourage you to check out the article to learn more.